So we're currently halfway through 2025, and a video that I've always kind of wanted to make was like a half point review of television of the year, of just the best shows that have come out over the first half of the year. Because we're in June now, we're kind of at that halfway point. And the reason why I want to make it is because 2025 so far has been one of the greatest years for television in recent memory. I feel like, at least in relation to 2023 and 2024, which both had their great television shows. I feel like 2025 has just been hitting so far with just so many great shows. Like, I think I've finished so far about 40 seasons of television seasons that have come out this year, and I think the quality is far above what we usually have at the half point of the year. And as well as this, there's going to be so many shows coming out in the back half of the year that might push some shows out of my top 10 currently. So I want to talk about the ones that are currently in my top 10 while I still have a chance, while they're still sort of relevant. Because by the time the end of the year comes out, maybe none of these shows will be in my top 10 anymore. Maybe I'll have a completely new top 10. So we'll see about that. But there are still a lot of shows coming out in the back half of the year that could be surprises. Like, Marvel is going to give us Ironheart, which I think comes out next week. Eyes of Wakanda comes out in August. Wonder Man is coming out in December. I have a funny feeling Wonder Man might get pushed to, like, I don't know, maybe January, February of next year, depending on how many shows Marvel has ready to go next year. They might push Wonder Man just to be on the safe side of having an extra show to fill a gap or something like that. Because December, usually, if a show is scheduled for December, like a year in advance, which it was. Last year, we had that next year in Marvel thing, and Wonder Man was like December listed as. I feel like December is usually a placeholder time of the year for, like, okay, maybe we'll have this ready by Christmas, but if not, we'll push it out. That said, they've had stuff filmed for a long time now. I would be a little surprised if it got pushed, but I don't think it will be. Besides that, Star Trek is coming out back next month with Strange New Worlds Season 3. We just found out that Season 5 is going to be the final season of Strange New Worlds, so it's going to kind of give us a push into Season 3. And the reviews for Season 3 are already starting to trickle out. Not as positive as I would have hoped. A lot of people saying it doesn't match up to the first two seasons, but I'm looking forward to it anyway. New Star Trek is always really fun, and Strange New Worlds is my favorite Star Trek show of the new batch of Star Trek shows. We also have The Bear Season 4 hitting us in like 2 weeks, or maybe next week, that is as well, which The Bear is always a huge delight to get. DC is coming back with Peacemaker Season 2 in August, which is going to be right on the heels of Superman. And we're also getting like Apple's Slow Horses in September, which Slow Horses is always a show that I'm really surprised how far up on my top 10 it ends up going, just because it's a really fun show. They're doing a great job at bringing out 6 episodes of it every single year. Plus, I think it kind of goes without saying that there are a lot of shows that I might have missed so far from the year. I feel like I've hit a lot of the big ones, but there are definitely going to be seasons of shows that I haven't seen, and I'm only including a show on this list if it's finished its current run. So if there's a show that's currently airing, it will not end up on this list until the season finishes. So this is the top 10 shows are all shows that have finished their run so far at this point in the year. Also, quick reminder to subscribe if you're not already, or a like and a share if you are subscribed and you enjoy the video. It's always a huge help, and thank you for checking this out. So really quickly, before getting into my actual top 10, I want to give shout outs to the 5 shows are in my 11 to 15 spots that just didn't make it into the top 10, but I feel like because they're so close to the top 10, I want to give them a shout out. So just quick speed run of these ones. The first up is actually a huge surprise to me, and it aired most of its season last year, but it finished up in January of this year, and that is Star Wars Skeleton Crew, which I did not expect to enjoy Skeleton Crew nearly as much as I did. It's one of my favorite shows of the Star Wars Disney Plus era easily. I was legitimately a big fan of this one, and I hope we get to see more of it. What I've heard is that we still are waiting on a renewal for season 2, which it's been half a year, and we're still waiting on that renewal. And considering that I think Skeleton Crew did about the same as The Acolyte, which The Acolyte thing got cancelled, makes me a little worried that Skeleton Crew might not actually make it into a season 2. It feels like they're definitely being a lot more cost they're being more cost heavy on what they pick to renew on Disney Plus and what they don't. The fact they canceled The Acolyte, which was a big Star Wars show, makes me feel like shows like Skeleton Crew might not have a chance anymore. But it was really fun. The first season was pretty tied together really well. So if we don't get a season 2, it's a fun one-off show. The next one, it was a bit of a disappointment to me, despite being this far on my list, and that is Daredevil Born Again, which, yes, getting into the top 15 is very impressive, but I did kind of expect this show to be a slam dunk for me and end up in my top 10, because seeing Charlie Cox back, Vincent D'Onofrio back, the entire Daredevil cast and crew back was really exciting, and I love the original Daredevil show so much. I think it's my favorite like non-miniseries television show of all time, to be honest now at this point, after rewatching it at the end of last year. I still have nostalgia spots for shows like Arrow and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but in terms of quality, I think Daredevil might be like the highest quality show that's my favorite. It's just that good. And I just felt like season 1 of Born Again was kind of a mess of a season where they had to glue prior footage that they filmed a while ago with new footage that they filmed recently. And that to me made it this underwhelming thing that felt like it was almost a Frankenstein show of just a lot of different things being meshed together, a lot of different ideas being pushed together to the point where it was like you're almost watching season 1 just waiting for the good stuff to start in season 2. Like season 1's like that season you have to get through before you get to the really, really, really good stuff. And I made a lot of reviews on Daredevil Born Again season 1, so you can check out some of those on the channel. But it's kind of weird because like some weeks I was like, this is really disappointing. I didn't like that. And then other weeks I was like, this is what I've been waiting for. But you shouldn't have to be sitting through bad episodes of a show waiting for the good episodes of the show to start. Now, one thing that really surprised me is we found out a few weeks ago that Daredevil Born Again season 1, none of the episodes ended up in like the top 10 streaming episode drops of that week, which means it wasn't doing nearly as well viewership wise as I expected it to, which has me worried on the prospect of getting a season 3. Season 2 is already pretty much done filming. I think they're trying to push that out next year in 2026, but whether we'll get a season 3 after that, it's kind of a flip of a coin at the moment, which is surprising because I would have thought Charlie Cox's Daredevil would be one thing that would bring in a lot of viewers. But apparently, in relation to all the other MCU Disney Plus shows, Daredevil Born Again has not been hitting the viewership ratings that almost any of the other ones were. I don't know why that is. Next up is a surprise and the other Marvel show that we got from this year, and that is Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, which is something that I didn't expect to enjoy as much as I did. The animation style was kind of weird from the get-go, like all the trailers were with that animation style was making me like, okay. It had been in development since like 2020 or 2019, which is a long, long, long time. That was also worrying me. And there was some discourse before the show even came out of some things that voice actors were saying. And it was like, there was a lot of, I don't know, drama. There was a lot of things against this show, but it was actually legitimately very enjoyable. And it got me so hyped to see more of what proper Marvel animation is going to be like from this point forward. Then we got a show which I expected to kind of end up where it is, and that is the White Lotus season 3. It was probably my least favorite of the 3 seasons of the White Lotus, but I mean, you know what you're going to get with the White Lotus at this point. It's a fun cast with fun dialogue with awkward situations placed around them. That's kind of all the show is. And despite being HBO, I've never expected the White Lotus to be the kind of show that blows me away. It's just a fun show that every 5 years it'll come out and I'll be like, cool, it's fun to spend a few weeks in this world. And the final show to make it in my top 15 is another disappointment to me, and that is The Last of Us Season 2, which is also from HBO. So I loved The Last of Us Season 1. I thought it was one of the best seasons of television to come out of the 2020s. It was right in like top 3 or top 4 of my 2022 list of television shows, which I think, no, was it 2023? Whichever year The Last of Us Season 1 came out, it was like place 3 or 4 on my list from that year. It was so good. I loved it. And in terms of the second game or the second season, I haven't played the second game. I've played the first game. I'm very well familiar with the story of the second game. Since the controversy of the game story leaking before the game even came out, I've been well familiar with all the plot points, with all the big beats. So I wasn't going into The Last of Us Season 2 unexpectedly seeing things. I knew everything that was going to happen. I knew the big moments. And I've been weary of that because I feel like that's a hard thing to translate to TV, where in TV, you know, you're watching certain shows for actors, you're watching certain shows for big people that you love. Losing some of that in Last of Us Season 2 was going to make it a hard sell to a lot of people. But even going past that, I just found it kind of a slog. I found it kind of ruining of certain characters, and the finale of Season 2 was probably my least favorite episode of the entire show. The reason why it's in my top 15 at all is because certain episodes, I think it was episode 2, episode 3, and episode 6 maybe, were the 3 episodes that I was really, really, really liking, and I thought that they were as good as anything from season 1. But there were a lot of stuff surrounding those episodes that I just did not like, and the finale, unfortunately, was one of them that really did push this show down on my list. Like, it could have made it into my top 10, but I thought the finale was just kind of bad. But anyway, with those shows out of the way, let's talk about my top 10. So in 10th place, I have SAS Rogue Heroes Season 2 from the BBC. And this was the first show I actually watched this year. I think the second season all dropped at once on like January 3rd or January 4th. So it was the first kind of completed season of TV to drop this year that I actually watched. And I was honestly expecting this show to end up in my top 10 at the end of the year. I was like, this is really good. But I mean, I didn't expect 2025 to be so fantastic that it's in my top, like it's number 10 already, which means it's probably going to get pushed out before the year runs out. It might even end up like in the bottom half of the top 20, which is surprising to me because I really did enjoy this season. Season 1 came out in late 2022, so there was a sizable length or a sizable gap between the two seasons, and we're likely going to get Season 3, which is probably the final season in 2027 or 2028, if I was to guess, just going off of the release pattern so far. The show is set during World War II, which, if you don't know anything about me, I'm really into like World War II films and World War II TV shows. Band of Brothers, The Pacific, Masters of the Air, they're all some of my favorite television watching experiences of all time. I think they're fantastic. And SAS Rogue Heroes is kind of like the English version of Band of Brothers, where it's focusing on like this elite group from the UK and this elite group from like, a mix of soldiers. One of them's American, a lot of them are like Scottish, Welsh, English, some from like Northern Ireland, stuff like that. And Season 1 followed this elite group in the deserts of Africa and that campaign, and then Season 2 jumps ahead and follows them as they push deeper into Italy and occupied Europe, with Season 3 looking like it's going to cover D-Day and the war inside France and the war inside like the main core occupied Europe territories. Now, I thought Season 2 was actually a step down from Season 1 in a lot of ways. It was more bizarre, more goofy. It took a lot more liberties with how it was telling history, which, to be fair, the show has never been completely fully like, history accurate to the books and the people that it's based off of. But Season 2 felt far more eccentric in how it went about history than Season 1 did. Every episode of the show starts with, this is inspired by true events, but it's not a history lesson, which is good. A lot of like historical TV shows should do that. But Season 1 would do a lot of these crazy things, and then you'd look it up and be like, oh shit, that actually happened really close to this. But in Season 2, there's a lot of characters showing up, there's a lot of things happening that you're like, this is not how history really played it at all. Sure, the broad bare bones of what happened here is pretty accurate, but the actual minutia of a lot of this stuff is completely fictionalized for the TV show, which is fine. It's supposed to be entertainment predominantly. But I don't know if anybody's seen the Guy Ritchie film from last year, The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, which features like Henry Cavill, Alan Richardson, all these people in, I think it's like late 1941 or early 1942 in World War II, and they're this special sort of elite squad, and they're actually very heavily tied to the SAS in history. Like the people that SAS Rogue Heroes is about, very tied to the characters from Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. But that Guy Ritchie film, as entertaining as it was pretty lauded as like being far too goofy, far too over the top, not really close to what actually happened at all. Sure, maybe these operations played out similarly, maybe these people were involved in them, but a lot of this stuff is being super, super, super over the top. And Season 2 of SAS Rogue Heroes reminded me of that film. It reminded me of like a Guy Ritchie take on World War II, which is fine, but when Season 1 was, sure, had its over the top moments, but was mostly pretty accurate to what actually happened in history, Season 2 being so over the top makes it feel sort of like a tonal whiplash, where it makes it feel like a different show you've been watching so far, which that was a little disappointing to me. I would have liked them to keep it more in line with the tone that Season 1 was. But that said, it was still a really, really, really entertaining and fun season of television. There's a reason it's in the top 10. It deserves to be here. It is extremely enjoyable. And by the time the credits rolled on the final episode of Season 2, I was like, give me Season 3. Give me it right now. I want to see it. So yeah, in ninth place, I have Season 1 of HBO Max's The Pitt, which is a hospital drama that feels like ER if ER had the format of 24. And if you don't know what 24 is, I mean that by 24 followed this format where each episode was 1 hour, with the entire season taking place over one 24-hour day. And then every episode was like, it was like 8 to 9 p.m. The following episode would be like 9 to 10 p.m., stuff like that. And that's kind of the gimmick that The Pitt goes for. It's ER in the sense that it was, I know, ER is one of the most influential hospital dramas of all time. It's one everybody still talks about today. And The Pitt originally started as an ER spin-off with, I think the main character in The Pitt was originally going to be a character from ER. That's the same actor playing both of them, but then they changed it to be its own standalone thing, which I think was a good choice. ER is like 20 years old at this point. Like it ended like 20 years ago at this point, so it makes sense not to tie this new show back to ER. I feel like it will bring in a new audience if it's its own fresh new thing, which The Pitt thankfully is. And it's an interesting show to me. It has the 15 episode format, with each episode covering 1 hour of this single shift inside the hospital on a chaotic day. The Pitt is one of the first new surprise shows of the year, where going into every year most people are excited for like returning shows or like franchise series coming out, whereas there's always going to be a couple of shows no one is talking about before they come out, and then they start releasing and everyone's like, oh my god, you have to watch this, it's great. And that's what The Pitt was. It was this show that came out of nowhere, and then as soon as it started, it was just flooding everything. I had a lot of people text me being like, are you watching The Pitt? It's really, really, really good. And It was really good. Usually, I'm not into hospital shows, so there are so many of them, and I feel like sometimes it's hard to tell them apart. But the Pit using that hourly gimmick keeps it fresh, and it means that they get to do interesting things by having characters get noticeably more stressed, more rattled as the shift goes on. And it looks like they're going to try and stick to a 1 year, every year is a new season release schedule, which in the age of streaming, it's hard to do that. Like you got the Pit, the Bear, Slow Horses. They seem to be the three shows that are now aiming for like yearly releases of giving us a new season every year, which that's really, really, really welcome. I want to see us return to that. In eighth place, I have season 3 of Amazon Prime's Reacher, and this is a show that continues to surprise me because usually a show like this for me that's heavy action and just that lone person infiltrating crime organizations, I wouldn't be super in love with. It'd be the kind of show that's fun to watch and entertaining, but once it's over, I kind of forget about it until the next season starts. But Reacher is genuinely a cut above what you would expect from a show like this. And Alan Richardson as Reacher is great, but it's not fair to put the entire praise of the show on him because I think it's the sharp writing, the sharp direction, the sharp dialogue that really does excel this show. Like the dialogue between the characters constantly surprises me as something I'm like, damn, that was actually really, really well written. They dropped the first 3 episodes together, and it was a great idea because the first episode alone had me like, wow, I have completely forgotten how intense and exciting this show could be. Like, they drop you into this story immediately, didn't waste time catching you up or starting with all the exposition and the setup, and it just kind of it hit the ground running straight away. I know season 2 isn't super loved by a lot of people, but I enjoyed it for what it was. I enjoyed season 1 as well, but season 3 is the first time it's been this high up on my best of the TV year list for me, and it has been the kind of series that I'm actively now waiting for the next season to drop. And thankfully, they've already started production on season 4, so we shouldn't be waiting too long. In seventh place, I have another Amazon Prime series with Invincible season 3, and the parallels between Invincible and Reacher are kind of crazy to me because the obvious parallel is that they were literally airing together. Both shows started in February with a 3 episode drop, and they were sharing most Thursday together through March. So you had the episodes both sort of coming out at the same time every week. So it was easy to sort of match the two shows together and watch the two shows every Thursday. But the parallels go deeper for me, where season 3 of Invincible made me actively excited for the next season in the way I hadn't been before. Because Invincible has been one of the current internet darlings, I want to say. Everyone's watching it, everyone's loving it. And while season 1 and season 2 both had moments or episodes where I was locked in completely, it wasn't until season 3, in my opinion, that I found myself being heavily, heavily, heavily invested almost every single week in almost every episode. Episodes 6 through 8 were some of the most intense and exciting TV I've seen this year. The way the season didn't even give you a second to breathe was crazy. We jumped from one huge episode right into the next one. The setup we had in season 1 and season 2 is mostly reaching its breaking points now, where there is no time for downtime or setup episodes. We're actually getting a lot of the payoff of stuff we've been dealing with and we've been setting up. So many of the big things being teased in the first 2 seasons are happening in season 3. And Invincible has always reminded me of The Boys, where I do slightly prefer The Boys as a show, but both shows have a problem where they can use cursing or gore sometimes, where it feels like that's what the hook of the show is. That, the fact the show is so adult is what the hook is. Where they're like, oh, this is a superhero show for adults. Look at all the crazy stuff we can do. Look at all the crazy stuff we can say. You won't see this in your typical DC or Marvel television show. And that can get boring for me, where I'm like, I don't care about the excessive gore. Give me the fantastic character moments. Give me the more interesting and adult writing and storytelling when it comes to the actual characters and what they're going through. And for the most part, I think season 3 was that. I think I've heard they're planning for 7 seasons, so we're probably going to get season 4 again pretty soon. I think they're also aiming Invincible for yearly releases now, which is really, really, really exciting. In sixth place, I have one of the 2 Netflix shows on this list, and the first one is the 4 episode Adolescence, which features and also is somewhat created by Stephen Graham. Adolescence follows the story about a 13-year-old child in England who is accused of murder, and each episode is entirely one take or one shot, where we follow an hour-long moment in this crisis. The first episode is about the day he's accused and arrested. The second episode is inside the school, where the police are interviewing his classmates and looking for answers. Third episode is the child having an amazing dialogue with his therapist, and the final episode is sort of the aftermath of the child going to prison and for his family and what they're currently dealing with. And the show is unbelievably well made. Like, it's only in 6th place here, but I think it is probably top 3 for levels of production on television this year. It's another one of those shows that I don't think was on anyone's radar at first, but once it came out and it started spreading, everyone was talking about it. Now, they're apparently showing it in schools in the UK now too, which is like as part of the education curriculum, which is kind of crazy. And Owen Cooper plays the main child, who is one of the best child performances I've ever seen in my life. And also, while Netflix is I don't know. It seems like they're not the front runner for television anymore in terms of quality. They definitely still are at the top for being able to drop a brand new show and having that be the show that everyone's talking about for a month and pushing that show in front of everyone. Like, I think quality wise, they're kind of being destroyed by Amazon and Apple in terms of television shows. But when it comes to brand new shows, they're just still the streamers that are able to push something to the front of everyone's attention and have that be the discussion focus for longer than any of the other streaming services. Now, they're already discussing a second season for Adolescence, and it's kind of clear just based off of season one that this is not supposed to be a multi season show. But I could see this being like your Fargo or your True Detective, but in the UK, where every 4 to 5 years we get a new season that focuses on a new set of people with a new case. Considering the show is called Adolescence, I think it's likely that any new seasons would also focus on something revolving around a young person. But I think that the fact that every episode is one shot would mean this is a really cool stylistic show that we get to see once every half a decade. In fifth place is surprisingly the only like HBO proper show I have on this list, and that is Nathan Fielder's The Rehearsal season 2. And what I mean by the only proper HBO show is that yeah, this airs on HBO Max, but it's just a straight up HBO show that also would then go to HBO Max as soon as it had finished airing on HBO. And this was such a crazy watching experience. If you don't know what The Rehearsal is, you probably have heard of Nathan Fielder, who did like Nathan for You or The Curse on Paramount Plus recently. And in this series, he essentially just picks a topic and rehearses for something that he wants to do. It's weird to explain, but in season one, like for example, he built a fake family using real people and real child actors, and he rehearsed for what it would be like to be a father and stuff like that. In the second season, he takes a look at airplanes and air travel in the United States, and how most air accidents could be avoided if the pilot and the co-pilot had better communication between each other. So he goes and he learns how to fly and spends thousands of hours learning that and looking into himself and looking into if he's autistic, and then dealing with the fact that if you're autistic, you're not legally allowed to fly planes or something like that. And it's just such a fascinating 6 episodes of TV. The finale was probably the most surprised I've been at TV this year. Just seeing the lengths Nathan would go to get his television production made and to get his point across was so fun and so fascinating. And you can kind of watch season 2 without watching season 1. So if there's any television show from this year you kind of want to watch, I would personally say check out The Rehearsal season 2. And I honestly make it this one just for how wild of a watching experience it is. I don't even know if they're making a season 3, but I hope that they do, because I'm officially on the train now of wanting to see what crazy thing he's going to learn or do just to make his next season of TV. In fourth place, I have the only other Netflix show on this list, and that is Cobra Kai Season 6. And this one is a little weird to talk about because the first 2 parts of the season came out over the course of 2024. I think the first part came out in like July or June, the second part came out in November. But the final 5 episode run came out just in February, just gone. And it's the only reason it's this high up on the list, honestly, is based off of those final 5 episodes. Because to be completely honest, I had major issues with the first 2 parts of the season of the show. I feel like both parts included so many frustrating character scenes, so many frustrating like love triangle stuff that really brought down the prior 5 seasons of the show. I'm a huge Cobra Kai fan, but it does get a little bit, I don't know, hooked up on the melodrama. And the first 2 parts of season 6 had so much of that melodrama, some of the worst in the show, honestly. It felt like they actually went harder in the first 2 parts of season 6 with that melodrama than some of the other seasons of the show did. But then part 3 of the final season was my favorite set of episodes in the entire show. It was so fucking exciting, honestly. And I'm a huge fan of Cobra Kai, like I said, have been with it since it came out. One of my first videos on the channel is me talking about how people should be watching Cobra Kai. That was just after season 2 came out, so way back when it was still a YouTube original and it did yet to even be talked about heading to Netflix. I also made a review on the final chunk of episodes of the show, so go check that out if you're interested. But the final set of episodes really did bring the show back to Johnny and show us why, despite the ever-growing cast throughout the 6 seasons, that at the end of the day, this was still Johnny Lawrence's story. He was still the focus of the show, and also why Miguel was the face of the kid's storyline, and why Miguel is in the show the new Karate Kid, essentially, like he takes Daniel's spot. But in general, this is kind of what Cobra Kai is. Throughout its run, it would hit you with the most soap opera writing that would make you want to bash your head against the wall, and then immediately turn around with the most hyped you've ever been in your life. And these final episodes did away with a lot of that melodrama and just put the focus again on the karate tournament and the characters. And it was a wrap-up I was super proud of, to the point where it might be in my top 5 strongest television endings of all time. In third place, I have the first Apple show to make it onto this list, and that is Seth Rogen's The Studio, which was a new show I had on my my radar for some time due to my love of film and the film industry and all that sort of stuff. And The Studio was 10 episodes, mostly being a comedy, half-hour episodes set in some kind of area of Hollywood or the film industry. Like, we had an episode about CinemaCon, we had an episode about trying to get a one-shot done, we had an episode about a film reel going missing, an episode about a huge film buff dealing with people who thought a film was a lesser art. A lot of these really, really, really fun things to put together. It was a fun show that had a cast throughout that is one of the biggest I can think of hitting TV in a while. Like, you had Scorsese making cameos, you had Zac Efron making cameos, you had Ron Howard making cameos. I've seen a lot of people say that this is kind of the Bear for Hollywood, where the Bear is showing how intense a kitchen can be in a restaurant, and the Studio is showing how intense being involved in Hollywood could be. Definitely check that show out. In second place, I have the only other Apple show to make it onto this list so far, and with no surprise, it's Severance Season 2. And I think Severance Season 2 is the current Game of Thrones, the current The Wire, Sopranos, Breaking Bad, Lost, Mad Men, Better Call Saul, whatever you want to call it. It's that prestige quality-wise show that is just trumping everything else on television at the moment. Everyone knows about it, or everyone's watching it, everyone's talking about it, theorizing about what comes next. And to be honest, it's also a show with the most to lose going forward because it's so heavily based around the mysteries and building up to what is coming next. So the show could really live or die by how its later seasons play out and what happens there. And the answer that they give us to the mysteries that we're theorizing about might not be what we want them to be, and that could really devalue the show and rewatches going forward. I was kind of worried about season 2 before the show came out, just because the behind the scenes stuff didn't sound great. The season had been heavily affected by the writer's strike. They had crew changes a couple times. We kept hearing that they were running into walls in the writing department a lot. And it kind of felt like we could have been potentially heading towards a season 2 that was not living up to season 1 in any way, that maybe it was going to end up being that show, or season 1 was great, and after that, the show never lived up to that again. And at first, during the watch of the season, I was thinking maybe this was happening because season 2 started to remind me of like the Bear season 3, where I still love the Bear season 3, but it's a much more artsy season of television than the first 2. Some episodes of the Bear season 3 are just montages of people having weird one-off moments. And season 2 of Severance was far more about these one-off episodes showcasing one or two characters in flashbacks or a different part of the world than season 1 was. And while this works for a lot of people, it wasn't necessarily what I loved about the first season of the show. But then at some point for me, the season really started to click into place, and the final set of episodes was better than anything that season 1 gave us and made me unbelievably hyped for what we're going to get in season 3 and beyond. But we'll see. Totally possible they drop the ball going forward, especially given the nature of the show. But considering they've nailed season 2 now, despite all the behind the scenes issues, I have faith it's still going to be a great season of television. And in first place is the only Disney Plus show to make it onto this list, and I'm so happy it ended up in first place, but that is Andor Season 2. So you can check out some of my reviews for Andor Season 2 on the channel, but spoiler alert, I loved it. I think it's the best anything to come out of Star Wars. It was the final season, and it wrapped up everything and closed the gap into Rogue One in a magnificent way. The best character writing I've seen on television this year, asking so many hard questions that put the context and world of Star Wars on display and parallels it with current day history and events that have happened across the real world throughout history and today. It's a tough watch for television, but I think it was so worth it. And it's one of those shows that is going to stick in my memory for years. And I'm probably going to make an effort to rewatch it once a year going forward, because it's just 24 episodes split across the 2 seasons, making such an impressive and infinitely rewatchable story that I don't ever want to stop thinking about. You don't even need to love Star Wars to appreciate Andor. It has so much in there that's just great television that works without the context of Star Wars. But if you're someone like me who has felt like they've been falling out of love with Star Wars the past few years, maybe give Andor a watch, because that was me. Current Star Wars hasn't been doing a lot for me. But then Andor was just this amazing television series that made me fall in love with the world again, and has me thinking I should go back and revisit so many of the other shows and movies that I haven't seen in forever, because that's how good it is. Something that just makes you fall in love with something again is a great experience, and that's what Andor was giving me. Anyway, those are my top 10 favorite television shows of 2025 so far. But how does my list compare to yours? Are there any shows I mentioned that haven't been on your radar that you want to check out now? Are there any shows not on my list you're like, oh my god, how is this not in your top 10? Are there any shows I have had in my top 10 that you're like, that was terrible, why is that in your top 10? Let me know all of that. I'm genuinely very curious. As always, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. And if you are subscribed, maybe a like and a share depending on all that. Thank you so much for watching, and have an amazing day.